And they're only here for...
Stockland Green,
Erdington, Morleyford, Erdington, boom! England till I die! England! This is not how I wanted to make my first long-form video. So I decided to go to the Tommy Robinson protest, and I honestly have no idea what to say. And I mean that in a good way. See, when I was heading over there, I was worrying to myself. I was thinking, well, if I turn up there, am I going to get back in the head? But on my way back, I'm sitting there talking to my mate, and I'm like, why did I have a good time? Like, why did I have a good conversation? And when I say a good time, I don't mean that in a weird way. The fact that when I spoke to people, it felt like it was from the heart. It felt like they were there for an honest cause. And that sounds so weird when someone that looks like me is saying that. But with that being said, I think it's important for me to say that there seems to be an issue. And as a Pakistani Muslim myself, I want to be a part of the solution. I want to be a part of the people who can help unite us, get rid of this whole racist bigotry, because let's be honest, there is a bit on both sides, and get to the bottom and deal with the actual issues that are affecting our society. I know I'm not alone when I say this, because I met a lot of people who looked me straight in the eye and said, I know you're not the problem, but people like you give you a bad name. And I get that. I've said the same goddamn thing. So as a Pakistani Muslim, I want to be a part of the solution, and this is what this video is about. Now, I am going to give some disclaimers, so if you want to skip straight to the video, the time is here. Now, the first disclaimer I'd like to point out is that I'm not an Islamic scholar. In fact, I am someone who was born a Muslim but had left Islam for personal reasons, and then have come back many, many years later. I am now strong in my faith. I believe in Allah, I pray, I worship, I am dedicated to my faith, and that's why I'm concerned about this, because when people say that Islam is the problem, or Islam needs to be reformed, I need to speak up, because if someone told me that my religion that I believe in, that I practice every single day, 5 times a day, is the reason why their society has issues, then I need to find out the truth, because I cannot take things on surface level. I need to investigate. Now the second disclaimer is a little bit contrary to what I just said. I am not media trained. I am not an investigative journalist. I am not someone who's done this before. This is my first rodeo. This is my first time doing this. I used to be a university student studying something completely different. None of that is relevant. For the last year or so, I've been doing my best to learn as much about the world as possible. And I wholly understand that I have a trillion more things to learn, and it's beyond my mental scope to even comprehend all the possible reasons for things to occur, but I will do my very best over the next 50 years to accomplish my goals. And the first one being is to understand things, and the second one being to fix things. And yes, I know I sound extremely naive, I've been told, but let me digress. Now, I would love to return to university and get a different degree, but I know right now I have the opportunity to help people, to help spread the right message and the truth, specifically the truth. So that's what I'm doing here. That's why I want to do this. But unfortunately, I don't have the resources at the moment. Inshallah, I do in the future, but I don't have the resources right now, immediately, to do full-blown investigations, to do full-blown in-depth reviews and details, double-checking, fact-checking everything. But I still want to cover what people are speaking about and to double-check what they're saying is truthful or not. So I'll work with the resources I have available, and I will always do my best to cite, to provide evidence, and to be truthful at all times. Of course, I have a bias. I believe that Islam is the right thing. I believe Islam is the way of life. I have tried being other things, not other religions necessarily, but I've tried living my life without Islam, and it is much better, hundreds of times better with Islam. And I get some people will look at me and be like, he's this, that, and the other. I get that, but I need you to use more than one brain cell now, and to genuinely understand what I'm trying to say. I know people who look like me will call me a sellout. I'd probably be called a coconut as well. Like, that is the sort of thing I'm going to experience. I get that, and I'm fine with that. Because at the end of the day, what matters is the truth, and that's what I need to find, not want, need. Now, that's the gist of disclaimers, but I hope you can get through this video without laughing at me, because I am awful at interviews. I'm awful at speaking to people on the camera. But let's hope I get better with time, inshallah. So this video is essentially a review / a showing of the interviews and conversations I had with people whilst attending the Telford March. Now, I'm not sure if that's the particular name used, but that's what I will be referring to it as, the Telford March. The ringleader, Tommy Robinson, does not have a clean history. He seems like a ruffian, he seems like a thug. Nobody really likes him beyond his circle. But, now, if we're being 100% honest with ourselves, he is giving the voiceless a voice. But then again, he does have a history of being a bit of a prat, so nobody really takes him seriously, and that's why nobody listens or watches these documentaries. And that's why whenever he's in the media, in the mainstream media, it's always for being a prat. Now, I know some people watching this will be like, how can you say that? Tommy's our boy, whatever. Tommy is a dude. His name is Stefan, but he's just a dude. He's not the idea. And I genuinely worry that some people seem a bit too obsessed with Tommy and not obsessed with the actual problem at heart. But I'll get more into that. Moving back to my main point, he doesn't matter. He genuinely does not matter. To me at least. And I'll be clear from this point onwards, everything in this video is not representative of Tommy Robinson. All of my opinions are based off the people I met and spoke to. Now, one of the individuals I did speak to was a guy called Richard Walton, who I will give more information on once I get to him. But I need to make it clear, the people I spoke to are not Tommy Robinson. They most likely do not share his opinion or his stance on this entire matter, but you understand what I'm trying to say once I get there. Anyway, let's get to it. So this is Tyrone. We're attending the, I'm not sure what this is. It's apparently just like getting rid of Muslims, or Pakis for that matter. So yeah, Tyrone is my cameraman. Do you want to say hi? Hello. Yeah, so we're gonna hopefully have some polite conversations. What we want to do is sort the issue out in the future, inshallah. Now, by this point, myself and Tyrone had made our way from the station towards the police station, and the crowd seemed fairly large. A few hundred people had turned up. It was, fairly large. And there seemed to be no issue. No one had said anything to us. We didn't get too many looks, but of course there were the few that were looking at us. Now, I have no problems with people looking at me because it's a sea of white with brown and black pebbles in between. And you obviously don't need to take my word for it, but it really isn't that bad. I'll be honest. Personally, I think it's just phenomenal. He's a bit of a pessimist. Of course we're going to stand out. But something I just cannot seem to understand is the fact that people only chanted, Tommy Robinson, he's one of our own. That's not even his real name. His name is Stefan. I don't get it. There seems to be this weird obsession with just the one dude, and I don't understand it. Because had I been a complete stranger walking past, I'd be a little bit confused on why one dude is this entire parade. Now this section I'm just nitpicking, but who on earth thought they should bring a Templars flag to this? Now I get they were falsely accused of heresy and they were put down, and it's a really sad and tragic story, but they were a part of the Crusades, an event where a bunch of civilians were slaughtered. Do you really want to be flying that flag? Now I get they weren't entirely good, nor were they entirely bad, but at the end of the day, it's a 12th century cult. And also, if you're comparing yourself to be on some sort of crusade, my lord, are you off the ball? The men of the 12th century were men. And I'll be honest, I didn't see any crusader types walking around. As lovely as you might think it'd be for you to be a crusader, the people carrying it, I'd also like to point out that the crusades involved a lot of pillaging, a lot of raping, a lot of murder of innocents. I don't think they should be your role model, let alone the flag you fly at one of these events. Then again, I am just nitpicking and the flag doesn't really matter, but really, who decided to bring a Templars flag? Jeez. Tyrone and I continued to follow the crowd, and it was roughly a 10 to 15 minute walk before we landed at the police station, where a sort of procession had begun. And I will be 100% honest, the chanting is abysmal. The crowd said shame on you about 6, maybe 7 times, and then it just died out, and it was a little bit lazy, let's be honest. I still don't understand why people are more excited to chant, Tommy Robertson, you're one of us, instead of chanting, shame on you to the police officers who had let you down. Now, as that had been taking place, Tommy Robinson decided to give a speech. I did not get it on camera simply because I was a bit too far at the time, but I did have a conversation with another gentleman during that, and it kind of made one thing apparent. And that was that every other lad has a six-pack in his hand, and it is just weird. Why is everyone drinking on a protest? I don't understand it. Now, I get it's the culture, I get it's what you guys do, but you're there for a reason, and do you really think having a bit of alky is going to really mellow you out? You're there for a purpose, you're there for victims, and you're having a drink. It's not a Saturday out. Leave the beers at home. You can do it in the evening. You don't need to come drunk. I don't understand. Now, the gentleman I was speaking to was drunk, but he was polite, so I'll give him that. But he just wasn't being coherent, so though we had a somewhat decent conversation, his points didn't go beyond, well, I have Muslim lads and they're alright and I don't mind them, so I'll keep my Muslim lads. I just want to get rid of the Muslims that are problems. And I don't know what accent that was, but it's just strange that so many people were drinking at a protest. Now, I fully understand that it sounds like I'm just moaning and bitching for no reason, but I'm being honest. If you go to a Palestine protest, hundreds of thousands of people turn up. The other weekend there was 300,000 people. Even when there's only 80,000 people, you don't see alcohol, you don't see drinks, you see a bunch of people actually there for a purpose. And you do get your rowdy lot, but they tend to be young and they tend to be dumb. But if you've got a protest with a few hundred people and everyone's drunk, everyone is drunk, that is a recipe for bad event. And you don't need me to tell you that. Just remember the protest that took place on November. 96 people who attended the Tommy Robinson protest back in November were arrested. And 4 police officers ended up in hospital for fractures. That is ridiculous. Especially considering there was between 1,000 and 2,000 people that turned up then. And this time only a few hundred people, and thankfully nothing actually happened. But that's because the police weren't being stupid, which I'm glad for. Now, I'm glad that nothing actually happened, but having a bunch of drunk, angry people is a recipe for disaster. But then again, perhaps I'm just nitpicking. Perhaps I'm just focusing too much on the people instead of the problem at heart. And you would be right, because 10 times people like to focus. 7 out of 10 times, people like to focus on the protesters rather than the cause for the protest. And you'll realise that when people call it a hate march, or when people call it this or that or the other, I don't believe the people I saw that day to be racist hooligans and thugs. I genuinely believe that they were there for a cause, but they don't help themselves when they get all boozed up and they don't have control over their actions and what they're saying. And that's a simple fact. You feel like the good guys, then be the good guys and put the drinks down. That shouldn't be a hard thing to do, and that shouldn't be a problem. Like I've said, it's not a day out when you're protesting for victims. The following clips took place outside of the police station. Now, the actual footage doesn't matter. If you just listen to the audio, you can hear a conversation that I'm having between myself and someone else. The audio is a bit... It has been cut short at some points because my cameraman Tyrone wasn't recording the entire time. Not his fault. The man did not want to be on camera, so it's not that deep. But we did have a good conversation, I believe. So I want to include the bits that we did capture here, and then I'll talk about that.
In generations, I'm an old man. But because of diversity, this shit is allowed shit to happen. You talk to me with wise words. You know what I mean? And then, do you know in the world gets going absolutely fucking nuts and stuff? So, if you allow things to get out of control, okay, what happened if we're in a gun and stuff like that? There's going to be so much hatred towards Muslims. You know what I mean? And it's going to be like, I mean, that's
what I was worried about. So when I got up here, we were like, oh, there's a lot of people. And we got here.
I think people out here, okay, will know some Muslims and stuff and respectful to them and stuff like that, yeah? But we're not allowed to sit here and allow this tech to happen. You know what I mean? Because it's like this is children. You know what I mean? And then when we look, it's the same thing happens with the killing.
Now, firstly, I think it goes without saying that there is no direct link between an increase of crime and an increase in diversity. Crime is influenced by a variety of factors, including the socioeconomic status of the individuals committing the crime, as well as their education level, or even the resources that are within their own communities. It is very reductive to say that, oh well, increased diversity, increased crime. All you're doing is, one, pushing stereotypes, but also giving yourself a bad image. All you do is look like a bunch of racists, and you don't get your own problem solved. You can't ignore the complex and multifaceted causes behind crime. Now, one of the big rebuttals that people tend to make to what I've just said now is that, well, if you look at the crime statistics, you can see this, that, and the other. That is purely and utterly incompetent. There is a massive problem with misinterpreting crime statistics. Higher crime rates in diverse or minority communities are often a reflection of systematic issues like poverty or lack of access to healthcare and education, and the more important one, job opportunities, rather than the intrinsic nature of a certain group. Come on, it's not that difficult to understand that. There's also the fact that a lot of white people don't like to talk about, and I say white people not to be rude or racist, but to be precise. Law enforcement practices, including racial profiling or over-policing in certain communities, can really skew crime statistics, because it makes it seem like a particular group is responsible for a lot more, when actually they're not any more prone to being a criminal compared to someone who is in the exact same situation that they're in. And the other thing is, diversity itself is not a problem, because blaming diversity is very lazy, because it's saying, well, had everyone looked like me at work, then it'd all be good, wouldn't it? Now, this gentleman did not say anything along those lines, but he did bring up diversity, so I will continue to discuss its benefits. Shall we forget Windrush? Shall we forget the simple fact that every corner shop near your house is run by someone that looks like me? All the low-income jobs are filled in by immigrants. All the construction jobs are filled in by immigrants. Not because companies are racist or whatnot, it's because those people come over here for economic opportunities in order to benefit themselves and their family. In turn, they pay tax. That tax goes towards everything else. There is a reason why my parents were invited to this country. There is a reason why my neighbors were invited to this country. It is because help was needed. And I know a lot of people who were not the individual I spoke to would love to say, well, if help was needed, why don't you piss off when it was finished? Because it's not finished. Let's be real. Since the globe has become a bit more linked and everyone's talking more, cultures, ideas, and everything else have been starting to mesh more, and we're seeing societal progress. And let's be real, at the end of the day, generalization is just stupid and very uneducated. You cannot take the actions of a few to represent an entire community, because imagine if the same was done to you. Imagine the worst individuals of your society, of your group, or people who look like you represented you. How would you feel? Tell me. You can end up perpetuating things like racism and xenophobia, or just general social division, which is what we have. That is why I was the only brown person at that entire event, because of social division. Stopping diversity or allowing diversity... Stopping diversity isn't how you solve crime. To effectively reduce crime involves addressing the root causes of the issue, such as poverty, such as a lack of education, unemployment, and many more things. You can't just attack a group or diversity as a structure as the root problem of your cause. It does not make sense. I'm going to stop lecturing you because there's really no point. Let's be honest, nobody's taking notes when they're listening to this. But this is kind of the nice part, when I get to have a few friendly conversations and we'll go from there. I had a little bit of commentary in between, but most part it'll be videos from the scene. So we turned up at today's march protest to essentially see what the rape of Britain was about. Now, we've always been told that these lot are all here racist, they're going to beat the shit out of you if you're Muslim, all of that, whatever the colour of your skin is. To be fair, it's actually been pretty relaxed. Well, it's not as bad as everybody says it is, I'll be honest with you. They've all got something that they want to deal with, so let's hope we can get a chance to talk to some people. Run down now. So my name is Hader. You don't have to give me your name, it's alright.
My name's Kenneth. Yeah.
Kenneth. So, I've been told my whole life here that people who come to these sorts of things, they're going to be racist, they don't like Muslims, they're going to beat the shit out of you for seeing me on site. I've been here for about, 2-3 hours now.
Yeah.
Nothing bad's happened to me.
No.
But I'm Muslim. Yeah. So this problem feels like something that the Muslim community should be engaged in and actually dealing with. Yeah. Absolutely. So what I want to do is basically just talk to people and see what their actual thoughts are, because I don't believe the message of, oh, they're just racist bigots. So if you want to give a few words.
Islam is not a race. For a start, it's like Christianity, it's not a race. It's all many different races of people can be Muslims.
Yeah.
So that's just rubbish then, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
People are kind of scared of Islam. A lot of people. Islamophobia doesn't actually mean fear of Islam, does it?
Yeah, of course.
it means like prejudiced against Islam in some way,
Yeah.
the way it's used. But I think people are not used to Islam do feel a certain unease about it, and it's things
that.
like this that are behind that unease,
Okay.
as well as the terrorism, of course. You
Yeah,
know.
of course.
No.
No, I get that. I get that.
I mean, it's not just Islamic terrorists, it's any kind of terrorism is scary.
No, I understand that completely.
Yeah.
So, when you came out here, what were you sort of expecting from these sorts of events?
I was expecting it to be smaller than it was.
Okay.
I'm glad to see the turnout.
I was shocked by the turnout. It was a bit bigger than I was expecting.
Yeah, it was a bit bigger than I was expecting, but it made me feel good.
Yeah.
Because people can feel very isolated in their views on such matters.
Yeah, 100%.
And so when I came here to support Tommy and the women involved,
Yeah.
but I actually found I got a lot out of it myself. Because it's a touchy subject to talk about, so
Oh, of course.
sometimes we don't talk about that with some people. So yeah, I was surprised to find that I got a good feeling out of it, just seeing the other people here, normal people. They're not Nazis,
Yeah.
they're not racist, they're just a broad spectrum of people.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
I think, just rewatching that myself, I've kind of realized that I am awful at this, and it will take a lot more for me to be someone who's actually of quality to be able to have these sort of conversations and do them properly. I've realized, and it's probably because of the type of job I used to have, where I kind of just let people talk. I like to let people talk, and then I kind of forget to talk back or ask questions back, and I don't ask the right questions, but inshallah, with time, I'll get better. This is the next conversation. I genuinely do believe that some people are afraid of being on camera. They're afraid of speaking, and it worries me because is it because of their thoughts and what the actual ideas they have and they have to censor themselves, or is it just something regular? They're a bit shy, whatever. But this particular conversation was a little weird.
Would you be willing to do a 2-minute talk on camera about this, essentially?
Sorry, who are you?
My name is Hader.
And what company are you with?
I'm not actually with a company. I'm an independent journalist. But what I'm trying to do is, when I've heard about this sort of stuff,
Yeah.
I've always been told that you're welcome to record me if you like. I've always been told that this sort of thing is a racist event and you're going to get beaten up if you turn up here.
Okay.
I've turned up, nothing's happened. So what I'm trying to look for is just go ahead. What
Sorry, I'm just videoing.
No, that's fine. Independent. No, we're not with a company. Hopefully in the future.
What's the company called?
No, there is no company. I'm an independent journalist. That's what it is. Yeah.
I'm an independent journalist as well.
Yeah. I'm sure you are, mate. I can't lie. The conversation with this individual is a bit strange. He's a bit, I'm not sure how to put it politely, but, I'll just leave it there. But the second individual, I'm not going to really bother showing the interview because he just waffles on about the Rothschilds for about 9 minutes. And I don't know why I allowed him to do that. This video has turned into a review of myself now, but he waffled on about how the Rothschilds purchased the royal family and now the UK is owned by them. The utter nonsense, and this is the problem, because people like this get a chance on camera for idiots like me, and then they just make this entire event from something that is dealing with an actual problem to a bunch of madmen and conspiracy theorists. And you don't want that sort of crowd mixing in. You don't want a bunch of nutters. There is one thing I will say straight up, and it's that I don't believe in an Illuminati controlling the world. If you take a look around you, if you take a walk around your neighborhood, if you look at the world in the bigger picture, if you travel, you will realize that there is no such thing as a force that controls the world. The world is too chaotic. There are a bunch of rich people, politicians, etc., who believe they can do it, but they're just naive. At the end of the day, they're arrogant arseholes, and it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to waste I'm not going to waste your time with someone waffling about the Rothschilds, but I am going to skip straight to Richard Bolton, which was the more interesting character.
So we were just talking just a minute ago. I think we kind of come from the same sort of background.
Yep.
No, not background, but more so stance on this.
Yeah.
Is that if there is a problem, it needs to be dealt with, and people like me, people like you, need to get together on this sort of shit.
It's dialogue. You've got to have dialogue, and I think everything's got to be on the table, right? So we were talking about, before we went to camera, we were talking about paedophile priests, right? And in the Catholic Church, for probably 50, 100 years, we don't know how long.
I mean,
there's
so
been a
the
massive
statistics
problem.
on that was 1948 to 2020, 200,000 young boys.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's been recorded. That's being dealt.
So I've just misquoted a source. The exact source is from a BBC article, and I'm just going to read it out to you guys now. 216,000 children, mostly boys, have been sexually abused by clergy in the French Catholic Church since 1950, and roughly 3,200 abusers have been caught or recorded. That is only in the French Catholic Church, not in the Catholic Church as a whole. So the problem is most likely much larger, most certainly much larger. So that's important context I thought I should add in.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the key part. Well, it probably hasn't been dealt with as well as it should be, but the reason that it happened, you've got to look at the causes. So the reason that was happening, not excusing any paedophilia, but if you make the priesthood so that you have to be celibate and you're not allowed to marry and you're not allowed to have sex, it's going to suppress those natural urges. And I mean, God-given urges, right? So those natural God-given urges are being suppressed and they're not allowed to express that. So that's not an excuse, but that's probably one of the reasons that happened, right? So that's been an issue. But
it's important to note that the Catholic Church is aware that there is a problem amongst the clergy, but it's also important to note the fact that they haven't reformed Catholicism. They are not changing Catholicism. There are different forms of Christianity that allow the priests and the priesthood to get married, to do their own thing, to live their own lives, have their own children. That wasn't directly because of a bunch of boys being sexually assaulted by clergy. Now, I'm not saying that Catholicism hasn't had any sort of reformation. The entire Protestant movement was a reformation of Catholicism, but none of it was due to the fact that boys were being assaulted or that there are criminals within the organization. It was because of political reasoning. It was because of greed. It was because of gain. It was because someone wanted to change something that benefited them and they believed that they had the power to do so. But let's be very clear, none of it was because of some innocent children. None of it was ever because of that. Anyway.
Then my issue in the UK is we can't have the same conversation about things going on in Islam. And like I said to you, I spoke to a lot of Bangladeshi women about what was going on in their community. There was one girl actually. She was, and again, I'm not saying names, but she was. She actually used to come to these demos like you guys did, right? So she used to come just because she was interested, right? And she started realising, hold on, this is actually what these guys are saying is they're not doing it out of racial motives. They have a genuine concern, right? So she got really interested in it. She was linked to us all on Facebook.
Yep.
And this was about 3 or 4 years ago. She sent me a message saying, I can't converse with you guys anymore. My brothers have found out that I'm in contact with you, and they're going to kill me if I. This is what she said. They're going to kill me if I. Oh, all right, mate. No worries. The reality is, okay, I get that, right? But here's the situation. The problem is, right? Let me try and explain it this from a Christian point of view, right?
Say it how it is.
From a Christian point of view, Jesus Christ is the perfect man, right?
Yeah.
He's actually God in our belief system, right? In Islam, Muhammad is your version almost of Christ. He's the perfect man. He's the one that you strive to be like. If you're
specifically in the Quran, and I've realised I've watched a few videos. A lot of Muslims get this wrong. Muhammad is never described as a perfect man. No, close to perfect.
Exactly.
Let me clarify my statement there. A verse in the Quran in Surah 4, verse 28 states, "And man was created weak." The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was a man at the end of the day. He was as close to perfect as one could be, but he was a man. We have examples in the Hadith where the Prophet had shortcomings, where he had made mistakes, etc. That's where we get the Hadith from. That's where we get to learn from the Prophet. There are examples very early on in the Prophet's prophethood where he had made mistakes and Allah had corrected him. So it is important for us to learn from the mistakes from the Prophet as well as his successes and triumphs.
Yeah. But in other words, he's the one that you emulate, right?
Yes.
He's the one that you follow.
We follow the Sunnah.
You follow the Sunnah. This is life. You want to be like Muhammad.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there's massive problems in that, right? Because of all the stuff that's. I mean, and again, my memory fails me because it's a long time since I looked at us. But there are real problematic things like Aisha, like Safira, the wife of the Jewish guy that was killed after one of the battles. I can't remember which one it was. So
the marriage of Aisha radhiyallahu anha is one of big controversy, and I can't summarize it in a minute, but I genuinely do believe there was nothing wrong. Not because, she was a 9-year-old, there's nothing wrong with marrying a 9-year-old. I need to make that part very clear. She wasn't a 9-year-old in the sense that we have 9-year-olds today. In Islam, to marry someone, you have to meet certain criteria. Both parties have to be mentally mature. Aisha was mentally mature, so was obviously the Prophet. Both parties have to be physically mature. Aisha is physically mature, so was the Prophet. You have to have consent from the parents for the woman, or her wali, her guardian. The woman herself has to give consent. And the last one is that both parties would have to be safe in a marriage where consummation would take place. For example, if one of the parties was very, very old, so let's say the woman was 95, 100 years old and the man was 20, she would probably have an heart attack. That is haram in Islam. Just for that, I would like to sincerely apologize to all the lovely ladies who thought I was an absolute stud and really... I'm joking. Now, there are hundreds of scholars, hundreds and hundreds of scholars who can explain this to you online on any video. I don't need to do that, but those are the 5 requirements. Aisha radiallahu anha and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam both met that. The conversation on Aisha's age isn't specifically, oh well, she was 9, the Prophet was 50, there's a problem. It's more so, are people taking it as the ages alone or everything in between? I genuinely do believe there needs to be an education, a better education for Muslims to prevent this sort of thing. But I'll get into that later.
When all those things are in the sources, the problem that you've got is that then it can be, I'm not saying it would be by you or any of your friends, but we know that ISIS used those things as justification for their carnage and their murder. We know from anecdotal reports that groomers think it's okay to attack and rape 12-year-old girls who in any right-thinking land are not ready for having sex, and they weren't just having sex, they were being brutally raped, and the reason they were being brutally raped because they were considered as gora or kafir or something less than they should, and that's why we're doing this.
Okay, so Richard just threw 2 words out, one being gore, one being kufar. Now, those 2 words are completely unrelated and in fact not even in the same language. Gore or gora means white, and kufar or kafir means non-believer. Now, for either of them to be used as justification, even whether it be anecdotally by a supposed Muslim or someone who was born Muslim, to justify their actions when it came to raping, sexual assault, or even sex before marriage, is horrendous, wrong, and un-Islamic in every way. Gore or gora simply means white in any South Asian language. Gore can be used as a noun or an adjective depending on the context. It is not a term or a class. And the word kafar or kafir means non-believer. In Islam, a non-believer isn't valued less because we don't have the right to judge. A non-believer is someone who is a non-believer, and it is our duty as Muslims to give them dawah, to share them, or even show the message of Islam. We can demonstrate Islam and its beauty with our actions, and that is what a Muslim is supposed to do, to peacefully share Islam. Now, I'm sure people want to debate the 100 verses. We can do that another day.
So my very, very simple plea to the Muslim community is, if you guys are really serious about this, you go all the way and you say, okay, are there things in the source documents and scriptures that are causing this to happen? And if there are, can we remove them? Can we reform? Yeah.
No. Even I would make that face.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. It's because it is stated in the Quran that it can never be changed. So the Quran can never be changed. The Quran does not mention Aisha's age. It doesn't.
No, it doesn't. I'm not. You got the hadiths
well.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, the age of Aisha comes from the hadiths, right? And they're authoritative hadiths. So
yes.
It's kind of a different.
We have the authentic and we have the less authentic.
Exactly. So the Sahih, isn't it?
Yes.
Sahih, okay. So Sahih Muslim or whatever they are, Sahih Bukhari, whatever they are, they are the authoritative sources, right? So what really is, for Islam to stop this happening, you guys have to say, well, we're going to say, actually, we don't want that in our religion, and you have to almost not reform, change Islam to stop, because otherwise it's going to keep happening, and it might not be you guys, right? But when the people come that take that serious and go, do you know what? We're going to act on the verse of the sword, I mean, there's one. Which one is it? There's one that's always quoted. About to kill one man is to kill. But that is specifically from the Jews, and it's taken from the Talmud. It's taken from the Jewish Talmud, and it's specifically about the Jews, right? So it's not even about Muslims. So that's talking to the Jews, and then the next one.
It's also a hadith by the Prophet that to kill one man is to kill all of mankind.
Yes,
so
yes. But that again, it's originally from the Talmud, which predates the Quran by Probably,
however long we know.
Probably, yeah. I mean, it's sort of 4th century, the thing, isn't it? So what I'm saying, I've studied Christianity. I haven't studied Islam as a scholar, but I've got a cursory knowledge of it.
I mean, you seem to have one.
Yeah. And I when I look at it, I go, there's problems, and I would obviously, as a Christian, I'd love to see every single Muslim become a Christian, right?
No, of course.
And every Muslim would want to see every Christian become Muslim, right? Right.
Yeah.
But the problem comes with the violence and there's nothing in the New Testament that you can use. I mean, people try and twist scripture. There's nothing that you can use in the New Testament to justify a holy war, right? You can't do it. You can't. Now, Christians have done that. They have twisted things, but there is, how many verses of the sword are there in the Quran? There's a lot. There's a lot.
I mean, to be fair,
and jihad is a doctrine. War is a doctrine.
Jihad, when it comes to war specifically, it's a struggle of war.
Yes.
It's specifically in retaliation. Yeah. We don't actually allow preemptive strike.
That's true, but here, think about this, okay? So think about...
Now, there is a lot to unpack there, but I think I don't need to go that in depth. It's a few simple concepts. As Muslims, we believe that the Quran has never been changed and it shall never be changed. We have manuscripts from within the lifetime of the Prophet. For example, the Birmingham manuscript is measured to be within the lifetime of the Prophet to a 95% accuracy. The Quran can never be changed, and the idea of changing Islam is insane. Also, the idea that, let's say a couple of Muslim lads decide to act on certain verses in the Quran because they misinterpreted it, and bam, therefore you've got an entire civil war in your hands. That's not how it works, because there are currently over 2 billion Muslims. Islam has reached the 2 billion mark. It's insane. Islam is the fastest growing religion by conversion in Japan, Europe, and North America. It is one of the fastest growing religions in Africa as well as in Latin America. It is constantly growing. It's hundreds of people every day taking the Shahada. I know people taking the Shahada. Islam's growing. Let's just say 1% of all Muslims all around the world, 1% of all Muslims decide to become like ISIS. Feel it. You would feel it. You would notice it. You would notice it. Because 1% of 2 billion is 20 million people. Now you're telling me, let's add up all the terrorist organizations in the world. It adds up to what? 500,000? And I mean all of the terrorist organizations designated by the United States and Europe. We add up Hezbollah, we add up Hamas, we add up all the Iraqi groups, we add up the Houthis, 500, 600,000 people. And they're all people born into conflict. That's specific context. They were born into conflict. Most Muslims aren't born into conflict. Most Muslims grow up with regular lives, alhamdulillah. We grew up in very fortunate situations, and those groups themselves, they all have very different political aims. Hezbollah has different political aims, Hamas has different political aims, the Iraqi groups have different political aims, Houthis have political aims. Now you can always say, the Iranian-backed Shiite groups, but that's a conversation for geopolitics. That's not a conversation on Islamic fundamentalism, because at the end of the day, there aren't actually that many terrorists. I know that terrorism is bad, and I'm not saying that, just because there aren't that many, it's a terrible thing. But at the end of the day, when you look at the maths, Islamic terrorism is a very new phenomena. For over 1400 years, there was no need for it. It never existed. It never happened. And I know I've said I'm not one for conspiracy theories, but when you start following the money, you realize that a lot of these groups, they come from a very specific source. I'm not going to get into that here. There is no point for me to do that. I'm sure your imagination can run wild, but at the end of the day, I think you know yourself that Muslims aren't walking around as live taking bombs. 10, 9, 8... Look, I'm not saying that what he said is impossible. It will happen, but the same will occur in every faith and religion. Did you know that there are Buddhist terrorists in Myanmar? Did you know that there are Christian terror groups in Africa? Did you know that all of the mafias and all of the cartels are all run by Christians? People who consider themselves very religious. They wear their cross while trafficking people as well as selling drugs. And when we look at the last 2,000 years, since the year 0 up until the year 2000, the number of deaths by religion, Islam is one of the lowest. Don't be shocked by that. Now, one of the main reasons why a lot of people don't realize that other religions have terror groups is because Muslims, or rather the term Muslim, is 4.5 times more likely to be used in media coverage in order to tell a story. If there is a situation where something can be painted as Arabic or Muslim, it is more likely to be covered by Western media. That is a problem. That is an epidemic. That is creating a narrative. And you ought to think for yourself and wonder, why is it always Muslim in the news? But whenever it's a white man or a black man, it's never their religion. Do you get it?
About this, let's say there's a Muslim majority in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
Right? And there is a push for Sharia, right? And then And this isn't something that's like mythological. This could happen, right? So there's a push for Sharia, and the population push back. Well, then that would justify, in a lot of Muslims' mind, that would justify fair retaliation, right? So in other words, if there's a mass push for Sharia, there's a massive let's say there's a massive terrorist attack, and there's a reaction by the non-Muslim population, whoever they are. And then and again, that's why these things to me are so dangerous and so unstable that we have to have a way of either reforming it or having people saying, well, look, do you know what? I reject that. You know, as a Western, you know, person, I'm not going to live under that stuff because it's going to be problematic.
When I said that's fair, I'm being 100% honest. That is fair. Nobody who isn't Muslim should want to live under Sharia law. Otherwise, you should be a Muslim. That makes complete sense. Now, the idea that this country could be a majority Muslim country is a bit hyperbolic. I'll be honest with you. Considering we're currently only 5-6% of the population, for us to be a majority, which would be, I'm assuming, 51%. Let's say as low as 40% would be enough, is insane. At that point, that means a load of people are actually reverting to the faith. That's not just birth rate alone. That means there is a load of people reverting to the faith of Islam. And let's just say 40% of the UK was Muslim. That is 40% of a very diverse range, but let's say 10 to 15 million of that 40% was just plain English white. I mean, inshallah, I guess, but if 15 million English white people adopted Islam, let's say over the next 25 years, why? That's what you got to ask yourself, why? Because to get to a majority in the United Kingdom by birth rate alone is implausible. I'll be honest with you, it's implausible. I know everybody likes to make their jokes. I know everybody likes to say, oh, well, the Muslims love reproducing. But it's implausible. It's just implausible. It doesn't make sense. But if there was a 40% Muslim, majority, or 51% Muslim majority, then you have to understand, or you have to at least then think, why are these people even there? By that point, Muslims themselves have to ask, should they be even engaging in politics? Muslims technically should not be engaging in politics. It's a very controversial topic. A lot of scholars do debate it. I'm of the opinion that Muslims should not engage in politics. I observe politics, I see how it affects us, but I prefer not to vote. That's my personal opinion. That's the school of thought that I follow. Muslims as a whole to want Sharia law? Of course we want Sharia law the same way that Christians would want the whole world to be Christian. But you guys don't understand what Sharia law is. There are books on it, and this here is a book about Sharia law. It's very large and thick. It's bigger than the Quran itself. It is very, very hefty. There's a lot to it. This is one book out of hundreds. Sharia law is not a topic that anybody can simplify or understand or break down. And I am happy to say that it is reasonable to be scared of something that you don't understand. But the likelihood of Islam taking over the UK is ridiculous. Like, even as an optimistic Muslim myself, it is ridiculous. Now, I know there are plenty of Muslims who I've seen on the internet shout, oh, we should have like different Muslim lands inside of UK, call them the Emirates or whatnot. They can shut up. Okay, we're in the UK. I will say that as a Muslim, I will make sure I will do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen. Not because I don't want Muslims to prosper, but rather because I don't want non-Muslims to feel like they're being thrown out of their own house. Otherwise, you'd be the same as the Palestinians, and I would never want anyone else to feel that way. Now, the question of, well, let's just say there is some sort of social division or some social tension. I know how you can best avoid that, and that is by not making us your enemy, by not painting us as the bad guy. If right now you continue to paint Muslims as the bad guy, and you can say, oh, well, I don't believe it's all Muslims, I just believe it's your ideology, you're going to aggravate 98% of Muslims. Most Muslims will get offended if you insult our religious scripture. We're very defensive people, not because we're violent or aggressive, but because we have a backbone. I need you guys to acknowledge that we have a backbone. We don't allow the insult of our prophets. We don't allow the insult of our books. We don't allow the insult of our scriptures, of our ideologies, or anything. 99.99% of us live in peace on this planet, alongside non-Muslims. We get along with you guys. We trade with you. We have jobs. 99.99% of us don't bother you. But when you decide to put a blanket generalization and insult us, and then let's say a big event occurs like a terrorist attack, and because of the social division you're creating, and now you guys want to retaliate against us, we have a backbone. We will stand and fight. We will protect our families. We are not scared of death. You have to understand that. As Muslims, we do not fear death because this life is temporary for us. Remember that. Now, what I've said might offend some people, might upset some people. I get that, but the way that people are going about this is just utter nonsense.
I'm going to have to go, mate.
No, that's fine.
Because,
thank you very much for your time. I appreciate that.
Now, don't cut that. If you're going to use that,
No,
I want to use
no.
that. I want, if you're going to use it for anything, use it in full.
Sure thing.
What was your name again?
Hayden.
Hayden, I'm Richard. All right, mate.
Take care,
yes.
yeah? Nice meeting you.
Now, I highly doubt that Richard Walton is watching this, but if you are, hey, I didn't cut any of the audio because I do believe we had a good conversation and we could have a better further conversation. But one thing I do want to point out is that to anyone watching, Richard Walton is a ex-counter-terrorism commander for Scotland Yard. Now that in itself is not a problem, and it would explain why he has such a knowledge on the Islamic literature. Now, if I was to have a future conversation with Richard Walton, a few questions I would ask is, did the police consult Islamic scholars to understand this sort of thing, or was it done by independent research? That is a genuine curious question, and I could probably find it in my own time if I took a chance to do it. But a more pressing question for me personally is, how is someone so well decorated as I'm seeing right here, right now? The right-hand man of Tommy Robertson, someone who is essentially disgraced. I'm sorry, but Tommy is referred to as Tommy 10 names. He's got a variety of other names that are a bit more colourful. Majority of the public doesn't really agree with him, and though yes, you get a lot of support online, there is no differentiation between possible bots and regular people. There's also the fact that Tommy is a bit of a weird figure. He's got a rough history, he's got a really bad history, and yes, pretty bad anyway. And I get it, we shouldn't take someone at their previous character, but still. From what I'm reading, over 30 years spent in counter-terrorism, and you've landed here, and I'm actually disappointed by that. I genuinely feel like you're in the wrong place. But anyway, it doesn't really matter where you are, as long as you're doing the right thing. And I genuinely do believe that the people in the crowd that I did get a chance to speak to were there for the right reasons. I don't believe that there were many racists there. At least I didn't feel like there were many racists there. And I need to make that part clear. I genuinely do believe that Pakistani Muslims, or Muslims as in general, should be at these events. They should show their support in order to deal with that social divide that is being created. But I need everyone who is listening to this who isn't Muslim to understand, Islam will never change. The ideology is immovable. You cannot change it. And yes, we acknowledge there are people who commit crimes in the name of Islam. We also stand against them. Don't forget the number of marches we have gone on against ISIS, against dictators, against all of that. Everything that plagues us, we fight against it. And I do realize that a lot of people are wondering why there aren't any Muslims at these marches. It's because we're scared. It is because we are scared. I started this off by saying that I'm shocked with the simple fact I didn't get banged in the face. Even when I speak to people, I'm like, why did I not get banged in the face? I'll be honest with you, I was expecting it to happen. I was expecting to get banged in the face. I was expecting to get attacked. Genuinely, it was a fear, or more so a acknowledgement I took whilst heading up there. Even my friend Tyrone, who was my cameraman, thank you, even he was like, well, if I get attacked, well, I've got to go work tomorrow, so I'm going to blame you for that. Now, this has gone on for a very long time, and I understand that. I'm going to set in on 3 things. We need to join forces to deal with the actual criminals at heart, because there's criminals on both sides. There are white pedophiles, as well as Muslim Pakistani pedophiles, as well as every other colour under the rainbow pedophiles. We need to join forces. We need to work together. So stop making us the enemy. Stop making our religion the enemy. You will not change it. You will only piss us off. Don't do it. Don't. Secondly, leave the booze at home. It's a protest. You don't need to bring alcohol. Make that a point. Tell people, leave your beer at home. Tell people not to bring their alcohol, not to bring their weed. I smell weed. That's strange. I shouldn't be smelling weed at a protest, especially with a protest with old people. Come on. And last, there was once a time that Ali Dawa and Mohammed Hijab, 2 individuals I actually look up to. I've never had the opportunity to meet them, but I do look up to them. Those 2 individuals did want to give a speech at one of these events, an EDO event specifically, quite a few years ago. I'm not saying Ali Dawa and Mohammed Hijab are the people you need to put your hand out to, but there are certain Muslim scholars who are in the mainstream amongst Muslims, and it has to be amongst Muslims. If it's someone that we are critical of because we believe or know that they're being funded, that they are lying, that they are spreading lies or trying to change Islam, we're not going to associate with those people, and we don't care if you associate with them. But you need to get in touch with the people that we trust, and you need to start doing that now. Going forward, I will be doing what I can with the resources I have available to review the series made by Tommy Robinson called The Rape of Britain. I will be calling this series Was Britain Raped? That is extremely controversial, or it will be at least. I will do it when I have the resources to ensure a just and fair analysis of each of the episodes, because one of the main claims against Tommy Robinson and his whole crew is the fact that you have fabricated, lied, or misinterpreted statistics. I will do my very best to verify and share the truth. Now, as far as I'm aware, the next protest is the 23rd of March in Oldham. I will be there, and the next time I am at one of these, I will be a bit more belligerent. I will be a little bit more questionative. I will be asking more questions. I will hopefully, inshallah, have improved my interviewing skills of people to be able to ask more questions and ask better questions. So I hope to see you guys there, and maybe...
Look, I didn't get the chance to speak to Tommy Robinson, and I think that's okay, because it doesn't really matter what he has to say. At the end of the day, he is doing all of this. He's doing the part where people need to hear. And regardless of what the loudest voice says, it's what the majority thinks. And I'll be honest with you, the majority here, they're not racist. They're not bigots. They're not going to beat the shit out of you if you're black, brown, or Muslim. And I don't know about the factuality about the documentaries that he's made. The Rape of Britain. He's made 5 episodes so far. There's going to be a 6th one coming out. I will fact check these and I will put up reviews on these. That will take time. But it is an issue. So we need to get here and show some support.
May peace be with you.